I've been talking dirty to you all day long.
Like a spider web, just lay in wait.
Fine, just let me know when you're coming up.
And wait for them to call you.
In a space of seconds.
Just make it out.
This is a shady business, prostitution.
Slow.
Get ready to hit this room quick.
Can turn into the rush.
What's going on? I'm sorry.
Kansas City police caught a John this time in this hotel sting. He is not their target. These rendezvous are leading Sergeant Brad DeMitt and his undercover officers to international sex trafficking victims trapped in Kansas City.
We're not interested in deporting someone. We're interested in taking off the bad guys.
They have a track record of tracking down the human traffickers here.
Do you have anything on you?
One of their cases started in a hotel room just like this.
We had one of those girls show up to us here.
It was called China Rose. The traffickers flew the women from China into the U.S. They drove them to Kansas City. Then they forced and coerced some of them into having sex with customers at several massage parlors. The traffickers were always watching them. These are never-before-seen pictures from the case against one of the traffickers.
And there were also the workers that were living inside the massage parlors, locked inside at night. They actually had them live and sleep in the same room they were performing the massages and sexual acts.
Some of the women were stashed in homes across the area. They were sold on the internet. The traffickers collected the money and laundered it. The hell lasted for months for some of the victims before it all came to an end.
We went in with 15 different search warrants and got them out.
The relief Cynthia Cortez sees on the faces of victims when they are rescued is the reason she keeps fighting for them day in and day out.
These cases are the worst of the worst. They're the most disturbing.
She has a reputation. She's tough. She doesn't give up. And she thinks out of the box. Human trafficking cases are among the hardest to take to court. She's prosecuted more cases than any other prosecutor in the country.
We take a victim-centered approach. They're not arrested, put in handcuffs, and treated like a criminal.
Her battle against human traffickers started 8 years ago.
But the initial thought was, human trafficking probably isn't in Kansas City, Missouri.
Her human trafficking task force uncovered an underground network in her backyard. The operators at the highest levels of the human trafficking rings are buying, selling, forcing, and coercing victims from Mexico, Central America, and other countries.
All of the victims that I have seen are looking for a better life. When they get here is they have a debt to pay. We see a connection between human trafficking and drug cartels.
Human trafficking is the second biggest moneymaker for the Mexican drug cartels.
But they also end up being both witnesses, drug mules.
She says the cartels can only sell drugs once.
With victims, you can sell over and over and over again.
Trafficking victims are easy to hide and hard to find.
We see our rings going from Kansas City to St. Louis to Chicago, back to St. Louis to Kansas City.
¿En esta semana ha salido?
Kansas City officers have a secret arsenal in their search for trafficking victims.
El negocio, ¿usted qué sabe de roofing?
Officer Octavio Villalobos can walk the walk and talk the talk
¿Dónde fueron a cortar árboles?
with the immigrants who may be the information link between the cops and the victims.
We noticed that when we ignore that or we don't take the initiatives to learn another language or train our officers different languages, that we end up losing out on potential information on something as big as sex trafficking. ¿Usted ya cuánto tiene aquí?
Every officer on the police force can enroll in a 12-week Spanish immersion. They go to Mexico to master the language
Totalmente, usted está en los
before
Estados
they
Unidos,
become
¿no?
bilingual
Sí,
behind the
en Kansas City,
badge.
Porque está bonito aquí. Es el
The
país
migrants
más
and the sex trafficking victims dream the same little dream.
They so just want to be legally in the United States.
Cynthia Cortez gives them a shot at it when victims help her put the traffickers away. For every victim she saves, hundreds, thousands more are suffering in silence on the streets of St. Louis and Kansas City.
What's going on? I'm sorry.
Until the second they walk into a sting that could be their salvation. The bright lights
Some of the best drinks, some of the best bartenders.
at the Penthouse Strip
So I
Club
got to stay busy.
are the front line for an army of people soldiering a mission to save a life.
Check it out. We're going to keep your party moving on for you, man.
The place where sexy sells is also the home of a movement
Who thinks that people get stolen from another country, they're brought here?
called Club Owners Against Sex Trafficking, or coast.
From the first person they meet out in the parking lot, the guy who's dealing with the parking lot, to the floor host inside, the person who collects the ID, the manager, the bartender, the waitress, everybody involved has been trained on what human trafficking looks like.
But if a girl every day says, like, oh my God, I gotta make this much, or I don't wanna go home, then that's a warning sign.
People generally believe there's human trafficking going on and that it's widespread in the adult nightclub industry. And I believe that they're mistaken.
Mike Ocello started fighting the perception a few years ago. He owns the Penthouse in Sauget. His company runs 18 other clubs across the country.
There is a perception that as a business owner that I would want prostitution in my club, that somehow that's going to bring more people into my business. If you understand our business model, the reality is we make our money from selling admissions, selling drinks, selling food, sweets, when the girls do dances. If the guy comes in and is able to encounter a prostitute and have the happy ending, let's say, he's not staying for that second bottle of beer. He's going home. That's bad for business.
He says it's impossible for legitimate club owners to traffic people. Trafficking requires force, coercion, and fraud.
They decide when they're going to come to work, how long they're going to work, who they're going to dance for.
Ocello's battle against sex trafficking started with a dancer in one of his clubs. Her visa was expired.
Her and her boyfriend get into a fight, and he turns her into Immigration and Customs Enforcement, saying that she's here illegally, she's working illegally. And we had a situation where an agent came in and thought in his mind that we were somehow involved in trafficking and importing girls and all this kind of stuff, and it became kind of a mess.
Agents cleared Ocello's nightclubs of any wrongdoing. It was a turning point. He couldn't stop thinking about it. He came up with a plan.
You could count me as part of the mainstream of people that had the perception that a lot of illegal activity takes place in those types of clubs.
John Torres was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Immigration and Customs Enforcement when Ocello walked into his office in Washington, D.C. He convinced Torres and the federal government to work with him and his association of club owners.
We could provide training to his employees so that they could recognize the signs of human trafficking and then refer those cases back to us.
Torres says 3,000 strip club workers and 200 adult clubs from coast to coast learned what a trafficking victim looked like. They gave ICE agents enough ammunition to investigate several cases.
We've rescued 11 women.
Agents showed them videos like these.
This case is ultimately a tale of the perverse, callous exploitation of young women.
And I look at my son and see all the innocence and the laughter and the smiles that he has, and it's a beautiful thing. And then, sorry. Touches me.
You don't know when you're going home. You don't know if you're gonna die. You don't know how many times you're gonna be raped.
You know, it opened my eyes. He could have passed it a million times on the street. I would have never known.
This is really about saving a life.
Saving lives is what Ocello is trying to do under the bright lights and sultry stages, and when the dark of the night breaks into the dawn of another day. Mike, we found a website where the traffickers take pictures of their victims in hotels across St. Louis and post them. They make it easy for somebody to buy those victims. They'll take the payment through a credit card scanner on a smartphone. The heart of St. Louis.
And if you're not looking for it,
is in the shadow.
You won't see it.
Of a secret.
You can go online and you can order a girl to any hotel room you'd like in St. Louis.
Sex traffickers.
I have a relationship with a trafficking victim who was trafficked out of a 5-star hotel.
Are selling girls, women, and boys
for sex
at hotels across St. Louis.
They could have contact with the front desk agents.
And across.
They could have contact with the housekeepers.
The country.
I worked in hotels in St. Louis for 20 years.
Kimberly Ritter is trying to save the victims and help officers bust the traffickers.
There are pictures of girls online, and you can absolutely identify what brand of hotel that is.
She works for a meeting management company called Nix.
You can see landmarks out the window.
She uses pictures like these from a website called Backpage to convince hotel managers traffickers are using their hotels to force, coerce, threaten, and sell their victims.
Traffickers talk with cash.
She says the traffickers will often recruit hotel workers to help them.
John can say, I want a girl tonight, and a bellman has pulled out a large book with pictures of girls.
She's on a crusade.
The average age of entry into the sex trade is actually 12.
To stop the revolving door.
I'm aware of one incident where we were waiting for a John who was looking to buy a 1-year-old.
She wants hotels to sign a code of conduct to train their workers on how to look for sex trafficking victims and report them when they see them.
The girls a lot of time will not make eye contact. If you ask them their name, they will pause and hesitate because they're not sure which name to use.
Ritter shows hotel workers the red flags.
And just one person coming in, no luggage, paying for a room in cash. Housekeeping will get a call for fresh towels or fresh sheets more than once. That's not normal.
The Millennium Hotel in St. Louis signed Ritter's code of conduct to end child pornography and trafficking. She says traffickers don't come here anymore. The bad guys are changing the way they sell victims in St. Louis because they know Ritter is tracking them.
The more I talk about what I can identify, the less I see in the pictures.
She won't stop watching them.
I care because I know it's real. I care because I've held these girls, I've held their babies.
Until the secret in the shadows is stripped away. The FBI gave Kim Ritter an award last year for her work to save trafficking victims. She and her company are trying to form a new network of law enforcement, corporations, advocacy, and religious agencies that can come up with a strategic plan together to fight sex trafficking. Tomorrow, the International Institute here in St. Louis is bringing together law enforcement, service providers, and prosecutors from across Missouri. They'll talk about how to fight human trafficking here, Mike.